Tonight we're very fortunate to have Richard Novak join us. He is an endangered species biologist in the Pennsylvania field office of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. He conducts Endangered Species Act consultations, has key roles in species status assessments, works closely with agency partners in conservation, and shares conservation with the public through outreach, like this evening. While his studies focused on aquatic animals like fish and freshwater turtles, he's also been fascinated by birds, and he feels grateful to have the opportunity through his job to be involved with avian conservation and connect people with birds around him. He holds a BS in Wildlife and Fisheries Science and an MS in Ecology from Penn State. Tonight, Richard's going to speak about preventing bird collisions with windows, local action, global impact. Please give a warm welcome to Richard Novak.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mark, for the introduction. Thank you, Randy Robinson, for the invitation to speak tonight, and thanks for NCTC for hosting me. So like Mark said, my name is Richard Novak. I'm a biologist in the Endangered Species Program. I'm located in State College, Pennsylvania. It's about 3 hours north of here, and we got down before the storm, so we had safe travels today. Primarily, I work under the Endangered Species Act, so I do a variety of project reviews and consultations for listed species in Pennsylvania, and we have quite a variety of listed species in PA. My favorite being the bog turtle, and then we have some bats that are listed, as well as a good number of freshwater mussels in the northwest part of the state. So my background is in aquatics, and really aquatic life has fascinated me the most. I'm not sure why. And through this job, I've developed an interest in freshwater mussels as well, because they're just, so charismatic. So my undergrad degree was in fisheries. My master's work focused on turtles. So primarily I'm a fish and turtle guy. And it has been quite a blessing to be able to work with birds through this job. So even though it's not my day-to-day work, it has meant a lot to me, and I'd like to share with you a bit of my experiences tonight. So first, I will give you a little bit of an overview about why the turtle and fish guy is up here talking about birds, so how I got involved with the issue. Then I'll move into the reasons why birds collide with glass, why it's risky to them, and then why it's also an important consideration for global bird conservation. Then I'm going to walk you through some methods that you can do at your own home or business to reduce the riskiness of glass tube birds. Some of the different retrofit options which I have featured up here. We'll talk about those in depth. And then lastly, what I'd really like to focus on is how you can engage the community. I think it's one thing, to treat your own homes and businesses, but it's another to kind of inspire and connect with people to do that on their own. And that's really where we multiply our conservation effort. So, does anybody recognize this location? Probably not. Okay, so this is what was at the time the Komodo dragon exhibit at the Pittsburgh Zoo. So I was here probably about 8 or 9 years old, and roughly in this position. I was looking into the exhibit, and from the right side of the screen, a pigeon flew in at top speed, collided with the glass, and was instantly killed. So you can imagine as a kid, that was pretty upsetting to me, and I really never forgot that. I've had a few other instances of bird collisions growing up, but this was the first and certainly the most memorable. So fast forward about 15 or so years, I'm sitting in the PA field office. We're having a staff meeting. This is about winter of 2021. And our project leader, Sonia, asked at the time, would anyone like to look into the bird strike issue? And instantly this memory popped into my head. And frankly, if I had not had this, I may not have raised my hand that day. So I could trace it back to that fateful day at the Pittsburgh Zoo. And then another factor that I was thinking about was the urban development that was going on where I lived. So on the left column here, that is downtown State College when I moved there in 2016. You can see these are Google Street View images from the same location 7 years apart. So on the left in 2016, everything is very low rise, 3, maybe 4 stories high buildings. The next available street view is in August of 2023, and you can see quite a bit of development has occurred. So when I was in the office thinking about this, I was like, wow, our town is really changing rapidly. Surely all of this glass surface is detrimental to the birds, right? Because in my mind, I didn't know much about the issue at the time. I presumed that high-rise buildings, skyscrapers in big cities were probably the cause of most of the bird strikes and mortality. And it's just important to consider, right? This happened in State College, but this is also happening in many towns and cities across the US, this kind of rapid expansion. And as we increase the footprint of the built environment, we're also increasing the risk for birds. So a little bit of context about State College. It is the home of Pennsylvania State University, which was originally and perhaps most importantly an agricultural school. So it's kind of situated in rural Center County, and you drive about 15, 20 minutes from the campus and you're in farmlands and forest. So it's kind of this little dense urban college town in the middle of rural PA. Gets a lot of students, right? I think the student body is about 45,000 undergrads, and pretty dense, a lot of buildings, a lot of changes going on, and obviously big sporting events. So like I said, I didn't know a lot about birds. I've always been like a bird appreciator, but not really an expert. So when I was a student, when I was considering this issue, I was kind of much like these other students, just going about my day. I didn't know what kind of birds were around me. I knew about cardinals and robins and all of the basic ones. But I did not know the level of bird biodiversity that we had in State College. So this is a recent screenshot from the University Park campus eBird, and lifetime species diversity, 167. And this is just a quick screen grab from spring of 2025. So you can see a variety of warblers here. We've got phoebes, tanagers, everything moving through. When I was a student walking around, talking to people and listening to music, I had no idea all these birds were around me. And I think that's the case probably for most students as well in the general public that isn't aware of the bird resources that we have. So I had started looking into things. Like I said, I started totally from scratch. All I had was the pigeon memory, and I wanted to do something about that. So the first thing I did was I just cold emailed the mayor of State College. I let him know, dear Mr. Mayor, I'd like to let you know about this bird conservation issue we're having. Wrote him a few paragraphs about it. And then I asked him if he'd be willing to do a mayoral proclamation. So he was willing to do that. And this was the first thing we achieved. And he issued that, but perhaps more importantly, he connected me with the Borough Office of Sustainability. Her name is Jasmine Fields, my contact there. And we started having meetings about broad sustainability topics, but also how we could bring some bird safe practices to the State College area. One thing I'd like to highlight is the Borough Communications team hosts a migratory bird website for residents of the borough, and they house resources for community members to go on there, learn how to do retrofitting actions like this, articles about bird conservation and birds in our town. And I wouldn't have been able to do this. We have limited website capabilities at the field office, but really grateful to the borough for providing that resource to us and the community. We started doing some lights out pledges in spring and fall during the migration period. The residents will go online and pledge to keep their lights out during the migratory periods to facilitate bird movement. And this started gaining steam. We started connecting with others in the State College community, including the State College Bird Club, the Juniata Valley Audubon Society, and some other partners. And as of last year, we being the State College Borough, recognized as a bird town, Pennsylvania. This is a PA Audubon Council designation, which commits the borough to a lot of bird safe actions, and we all get together and plan outreach events in the community. So really this all started because of that pigeon. I definitely can't claim credit for the whole thing, but my involvement in it happened just because of that memory. And I'll talk a little bit later, some of my friends and colleagues that are in this too, it's usually traceable to one thing. Like I said, we'll talk about that. So that's a high-level overview of how I got into this. And I'd like to use the rest of the talk to share with you some of the things I've learned and my experiences. And the first is that these little actions we do have literally a global conservation impact. And I'll explain why that is. Many bird conservation issues are distant from us. So things like deforestation, it's not necessarily happening in our backyard, but that's impacting birds globally. Nothing can be closer to home than a bird colliding with your window when you're sitting, at home. So it's very direct, it's very tangible, and lots of people have memories of this happening in their own lives. So it makes it easy to connect with people. And luckily we can do things to prevent that. So like I said, it's a global conservation issue. The birds are migrating between countries, right? They're international citizens. They don't care about borders. They move whenever they want. And they're challenging, right? So they've got to deal with weather events, predation, and all the other threats that birds face. It's very unfortunate to lose birds, at windows when that's a preventable instance. So luckily, these things are addressable. You can do it right away. You probably have some materials at home that you could begin to treat your windows. Ones that are commercially available are generally pretty low cost, to the tune of pennies per square foot, up to $1 or $2. Some of the more commercialized ones can get more expensive than that. But the DIY ones are pretty cheap, and they're easy to implement, and often pretty fun to do that. So, like I said, it's important to do this, and really every square foot of glass we can treat is protecting birds. So every square foot matters. But I, like I said, focus primarily on aquatics. I don't have a ton of time to devote to the bird strike effort. So I need to focus on a strategy that lets me kind of expand my impact, and really that has been through outreach. So I'll go over some of the activities I've done in our local communities, and also point out some examples from some of my friends. And I think it'll point out how outreach really multiplies the impact we can have. So when I give presentations like this, I always like to ask, who has had a bird collide with their window at their home? Pretty much everybody, right? So it's usually about 90 to 100% of the audience has had that happen. And that really tells me two things. One is that I'm gonna have something in common with you, right? Like we've both seen this happen, we know what it's about. And it probably made us feel sad, right? Like you're not gonna get happy if a bird hits a window. So I have kind of some leverage into a conversation with most people about this issue. But if everyone has had this happen, that must mean a lot of birds are dying from this, right? So like I've done a number of presentations, almost everybody raises their hand. It's a case everywhere I go. Surely we're losing many, many birds to this. And all species are pretty vulnerable to window collisions. Small as hummingbirds, through sparrows, warblers, and then even large birds of prey are vulnerable to bird strikes. And this impacts both common species as well as ones that are of conservation concern, threatened and endangered species, and it becomes even more important to protect against losses in those species. So can I have some audience guesses to shout them out on how many birds you think are lost to windows in the US each year? Any guesses? How many? Billions, okay. You highballed it. Anyone else? 500 million? Anyone else? This is actually the highest estimates I've ever gotten. Most people start in like the tens of thousands, and then I keep raising them up a few orders of magnitude. So there's a few estimates out there. It's in the upper hundreds of millions, and likely a billion or more birds are lost each year, right? Like that's a very staggering number. And it doesn't happen in your life at a very high frequency, right? It might, for me, I can think of 4 or 5 times I've actually seen it happen, or maybe found a bird at the base of a window. So how can it be that many? And if we think about our country as a whole, we've got urban areas in kind of concentrated zones, right? So here's kind of a map of urban density of the US, and you can see the major cities are pretty much dots on the map. And like I said earlier, when I got into this, I really thought that the skyscrapers and the big cities would be the biggest cause of bird mortality. So we're seeing the big cities here, but we're not seeing the small towns and cities in which there are far more buildings total than there are in the big cities. So cities very concentrated, everything else is more sprawled out, and the buildings are far more numerous. So there's many millions of square feet of glass in the United States. And say your home gets, I don't know, 3 or 4 collisions a year. There's 100 million buildings in the United States. That adds up to hundreds of millions of birds lost. So it's easy to see how that number is getting so high. It's second only to bird mortality loss from feral cats. Okay, so this is a major bird conservation issue. I chose to highlight a few birds that I see in the central PA area, kind of just because I like them. So on the left, we've got the black and white warbler. This is a species that likes mature mixed deciduous forest for nesting. In the center is the golden-winged warbler. This is a species that's in pretty steep decline in the eastern US, but it prefers younger, more early successional habitats. And on the right, the scarlet tanager, which again, like the black and white warbler, prefers mature forest and particularly interior forests. So none of those habitat descriptions included glass, did they? Right? So glass is not a part of a bird's natural habitat, but if you look at these maps, these are the migratory routes that each of these species takes. They're moving through, in and around all of those cities and other areas that are developed that I had on the previous slide. So glass has become either part of their habitat or part of their travel corridors. So inevitably they're going to be exposed, and really all migratory species are likely to be exposed to glass surfaces. But it's easy to see. So I see scarlet tanagers show up maybe late April, and then they'll leave in the fall. I only get to see them for a part of the year, but they're spending their time in the South US on their way back down to Central and South America for overwintering. So just because I'm not seeing them doesn't mean the time that they spend in Pennsylvania isn't important, right? So if we're losing golden-winged warblers, which are already in decline, like I mentioned, that's chipping away at an already low population. We want to prevent that. So I think this map is good to kind of show you how this is really a global issue. It's easy to lose sight of it when you're just at home, not thinking about bird migrations. But they've got very challenging journeys, and we want to facilitate that as best we can. So now I'll move into the reasons why birds collide with glass. On the left is demonstrating what's called a pass-through effect. So it looks like you could just fly right through that, right? This is seen on typically like the corner of a building where there's window visible on both sides. Sky bridges that connect buildings often have a pass-through effect. Birds do not know about glass. They do not see this as a barrier. They see some habitat or open space on the other side, and they will just fly right through. Because like I said, they don't know that the glass is there. The other effect that's common is the reflection of glass. So most glass at different times of day will have a reflective surface, right? Like you can see trees in the sky in it. But there's some types of glass that are almost a mirror finish. So this is me at the University of Pittsburgh campus, and then you can see the exact opposite habitat from me there. Totally mirror reflection. And there's actually a dead bird there from a collision. But this, was identified as a real hotspot on the campus. So these are the two main issues, right? And as we try to reduce the risk of glass to birds, our goal is to make them able to perceive it. So who has looked at a bird flying through a forest canopy or maybe some shrubbery? Do they collide with the branches? No, right? Birds are very nimble flyers. They have a really good sense of what they can and cannot fit through. And our goal with these retrofits, retrofit meaning we're applying a treatment to an existing pane of glass, is to make that look like something that's too complex that they won't try to fit through. So like I said, breaking up the reflection and breaking up those pass-through spaces to create a solid barrier is really important. It's critical to apply the treatments to the outside surface of the window. Most residential windows, and even like commercial windows, are going to have a double pane. So if you apply the stickers or the dots or whatever it is to the inside of the window, the exterior surface is still going to have all of that reflection. They may not even be able to see the markers on the inside. So that can be challenging if you have a high-rise building, but it's really important, again, to apply the markings to the outside. 2-inch by 2-inch spacing is kind of a accepted guideline at this point. It has kind of shrunk down from some previous numbers, but that is intended to protect birds as small as hummingbirds, right? So they've got a very small wingspan. 2 by 2 spacing ensures that even hummingbirds will be deterred from trying to pass through that. I think the image on the right does a really nice job. You can see that chickadee, 2-inch vertical space there. It's like, it's a little tight. I'm not going to try to fly through that. And same thing with the wingspan on the width there. That's actually a 4-inch space. It still, has pretty good effectiveness. And there's also tons and tons of options out there, and this is where it gets kind of exciting and customizable. So I made this window here, and Randy made this Acopian curtain display here. So these are just 4 options that you can do. The first being dots or decals, which is depicted in that center image there. These are pretty common. But the purpose of these is to not obstruct our view so much, so the markings are really small, but it's arranged in such a way in a grid pattern that it's too complex for the birds to try to fly through, and they are effectively deterred. Another option is this window tape here, kind of a translucent material, and you could really use any color you'd like, and also any pattern you like. So I am exhibiting a diagonal pattern here. That bottom right has diagonal and horizontal bars. Again, apply this to the outside surface of the window. This works particularly well for breaking up the reflection. So you can see the habitat trees on the other side of that window there are pretty effectively broken up by the, the tape. Another option are what's called Acopian bird curtains or Zen curtains. This is very cheap to do. Who has paracord or rope at their house? So you can go home and make this, like tonight, okay? So they're very cheap. Paracord's cheap. You put this on the outside of your window, and in this case, he's got some metal flashing here, hold that up, but a little strip of wood or a 2x4 or something, hang that above your window on the exterior surface. I have seen some people just kind of hang the ribbons or the paracord down without a bottom connector, but Randy has it here connected to the bottom. That keeps that spacing, so if there's wind or anything, it doesn't move it around and ensures that we've got adequate deterrence here. So top right example, finger paint, that's super fun. Who wouldn't want to make a cool decoration on a window? And again, as long as you're meeting the 2x2 recommendations, as long as the markings are spaced closely together, it's going to be an effective bird deterrent. I've got here an example of these bird silhouette decals. This is what I thought everybody did. And in fact, the Pittsburgh Zoo, they put these up at the Komodo dragon exhibit after the pigeon incident. And I was like, sweet, they actually did something, right? Like, they followed it through. What about this might not be so effective? What's that? I don't know that birds actually perceive these as other birds. What about the arrangement of them? Yeah, the spacing is too much. In this case, it's pretty condensed because I have it on like a little window pane. But on a big surface, it probably has some effect, but there's still plenty of either pass-through or reflective surface that it's not a totally effective barrier for the birds. So I've just went over some of the basic examples here, and I'm going to include some resources for you. I've got QR codes up here, but at the end I'm going to share my contact information. I can get you these links in an alternative format. So the Fish and Wildlife Service has prepared a suite of what's called a collision toolkit for different audiences, homeowners, students, business owners, things like that. In each one is a variety of resources on the different materials you can access, where to get them, why they're effective. They also have some advocacy materials in there, like template letters for approaching university administrators or people in your borough, things like that. So check out the Fish and Wildlife Service page. The Byrd Collision Prevention Alliance, which Fish and Wildlife is a partner of, also has a lot of tremendous resources on there, similar to what Fish and Wildlife has, and I encourage you to check both of those things out. You can also contact your Fish and Wildlife Service office directly. They may not have a migratory bird program person in their staff, but they can direct you to somebody who does and get you that information. Also, state agencies, Audubon chapters, and local bird clubs are likely to have materials on this as well. And it's a good idea to connect with them on this. So, like I said, really every square foot of glass matters. Every retrofit fit is important. If I, treat my home and I prevent a collision with a scarlet tanager, I've contributed to global bird conservation in a small but important way. And these are also good investments, right? So they're cheap, but they also last a very long time. Most of them, last 5-10 years or more. Finger paint, not so much, but these commercial products last for a pretty good while. And then when, something happens to them, they're easy to replace. So, like I said, my job is not entirely, this topic. I've got pretty limited time, limited funding, and resources. So how can I have a bigger impact on the community and therefore bird conservation? I have spent a lot of time focusing on community engagement, right, about this issue. So I'm going to walk through some of those things that I've done and tell you why increasing awareness, I think, can be just as valuable as treating the glass itself. So I try to target areas in the community that get a lot of foot traffic and a lot of visibility. This here is a public demonstration that I did at the Penn State Botanical Gardens, the Penn State Arboretum. So we hosted an event here, invited members of the public to come out, and we conducted a bird safe glass retrofit application on what's called the glass house of the Arboretum. So the entire surface of that is coated in glass. Was the perfect candidate for a display like this. And we had some members of the Bird Safe Penn State group, some students came out. That was really touching for me, like to hear what they had to say and how important it was to them. They're very passionate about birds, and it was an exciting day for them, and me too. So we had about 40 people attend. We treated the doors of the building, which we're doing on the right there. So we didn't protect the entire glass house, right? Like we've protected the doors. Still a lot of glass surface there that's risky, and we're working on getting that treated. But what is really important to me is the Arboretum gets tens of thousands of visitors every year, right, that are likely to see this. And they may have never heard of this before, right? And they'll see the dots on the window and wonder, hey, what's that? We have some educational signage there to let them know what it is and links to more resources. So this one little event we did, it took about an hour, is now reaching thousands of people a year. There's a Penn State article about that if you'd like to check it out at the link there. So in addition to high traffic areas, I also like to focus on schools and libraries and other places of learning, because people that are going to those places are already pretty inquisitive and looking to learn. So it's been really easy to bring this topic to those areas. So on the left, there I am doing a kids bird watching demonstration at the SCLO Library in State College, PA. Really my goal was to plant seeds in their heads about getting interested in birds and how to become a little bird watcher themselves. And then later we did a bird safe glass on the entry of the SCLO Library itself. Again, people coming in and out of the library are going to be exposed to that every time they come in. So we're spreading awareness of this issue to the community members. I always like to put some kind of sign out, right, to let people know and particularly link them to more information. So we made one and put it up on this display as well. So a few other examples, I've come across these through my work and travels. On the left is the Minnesota Valley National Wildlife Refuge. I visited there a couple years ago, and they have a wildlife viewing area. So I'm inside the building there looking out, and you can see some nice deer hanging out there. So that's actually what the dot pattern looks like when you're inside. So it's pretty minimally obstructive there. I can see the deer having a good time, right? It's not really blocking my view at all. But they have this on the entire surface of the wildlife viewing area. And what's nice is they have an example of the product there for people to see and get a feel for, as well as the instructional materials on what to do and resources for them. In the middle is the Audubon Community Nature Center in Jamestown, New York. I was there for a meeting, and every time I see bird safe glass, I take a picture of it, so I got excited to see this one there. And that features a few different options, which is nice. So I've seen that a couple places. The John Hines National Wildlife Refuge has a similar display where it features multiple of the retrofit types. I think that's really effective. The last one is actually inside at the Carnegie Museum of Natural History. I believe that's in the Byrd Hall, which is a good place to put it. But that kind of gives people an overview of the topic and a few examples of why retrofitting is effective for birds. So maybe you have connections to somewhere like this in your community, whether you're active in your local library, a museum, or perhaps you own a business. Like I said, places that get a lot of foot traffic are pretty prime targets for this type of outreach. So speaking of local libraries, I had the opportunity to present at the Shepherdstown Library, not far from here, earlier this spring. This was a lot of fun. Again, we had a presentation where I gave an overview of the bird strike issue. Then we went outside and actually treated some of the windows. Here you can see a few of us engaged in applying that to one of the corner windows. And then I went inside the library and looked out at what we had just applied. And can anybody really see the dots there? No. Right, so because I've got kind of a complex background there, it kind of blends into the trees and the branches. And especially once you've been around it for a while, your brain doesn't really notice it anymore. But this is pretty undetectable and kind of hard to notice. You can notice it up against the sky or a snow background, like there's pretty good contrast there. So another thing I encourage you to do is get creative with your presentations. So I've got this display here, and this is actually a door that somebody gave to me and I cut it in half, cut the bottom off, and then used the top half because it had these nice window panes, and it enabled me to display multiple of these retrofit options. But you can pick these up very cheap at construction yards for just a few dollars. Or if you tell them what you're doing, they'll probably donate it to you, right? So a few others in our Fish and Wildlife Internal Collisions group have made these across the US, and they're getting really good results with them, and it's an effective outreach tool. I can take it anywhere. I can fit it in the bed of my truck, right? So it's a mobile bird display. And I'm gonna copy Randy's idea, right? This is actually a poster frame with the cardboard removed. So it's just that vinyl, it's not actually glass, so it's super lightweight. And then he just has the setup there with the Zen curtain. So I will be going back and making one of those, Randy. So those are just a few examples that I've done. And I'd like to highlight some really creative examples from some of my good friends and colleagues. And what I'm gonna do is talk a little bit about their origin as well, about how they got into this issue, and then I'm gonna highlight what they did. So a friend of mine, Rachel Duke, is the public programs manager at the Arboretum, and she's actually the one that arranged the Bird Safe event we did there. So after the event, she came up to me and let me know that her family's ice cream truck was experiencing bird collisions on the side of the window, or the side window of the truck. So she asked me if she could have a few square feet of the dot material. So I was like, sure, but it'd be pretty cool if you put a link to more information out there so you can spread that information. So they went and did that on the side of their ice cream truck, and they went kind of on their own fruition, above and beyond, made a really nice video about this, super creative, and they drove this around for several summers now, and they've reached thousands of rural Pennsylvania customers that may have not otherwise been exposed to this topic while getting ice cream. So they're definitely going to remember that example. And as far as I know, this is probably the first and only bird-safe ice cream truck. Does anybody know of other ones? Right, so that's super creative, great idea, and great action by Rachel and her family. So another great example I'd like to highlight is my colleague Georgia Riggs. She's based in the Tulsa, Oklahoma field office. I was asking her before this, like, Georgia, how did you get involved in the bird strike issue? Because she's really excellent in it, major contributor. And when she was applying to graduate school, she had a general interest in urban bird ecology and came across a posting in Dr. Scott Loss's lab at Oklahoma State University. Dr. Loss is a big player in this academic field. Studies, the reasons why bird collides with glass. He's produced some of the annual estimates and really, like I said, big contributor. So anyways, Georgia applied and got the position and did her master's in Dr. Loss's lab. So part of her thesis chapter involved studying the effectiveness of the bird dots at glass bus shelter stations. And that to me is just creative right off the bat, because I think of this issue, and bus stops are not popping to mind, right? Like, I'm thinking of buildings, but these are certainly glass surfaces that birds are colliding with. And she was able to demonstrate the effectiveness and a significant reduction in bird collisions at these bus stations in the Stillwater campus. So again, these bus stations had a small display letting people know about what the product was and what it does. So if you think about it, thousands of people are using the bus line on Oklahoma State campus every year. It looks a little weird, right? Like, if you're not in the bird world, you don't know what that is, you're going to be curious about it. So she's reaching thousands of students and visitors every year. Her paper is there if you'd like to take a look at that and what she found with her research work. I would be remiss to mention everything else she's got going on. So after graduating, she's still with the Fish and Wildlife Service. I had the opportunity to stop by her office in Tulsa last year, and she made the building bird safe with some, I assume finger paint, tempera paint of some kind, but it looks really nice. She's a real champion for that in the Tulsa area, and kind of rallies her community, garden clubs, Audubon chapter, and things like that. So thank you, Georgia. Last example I'd like to point to is my good friend and colleague, Monica. She's actually a member of our office, but she's based out of the headquarters office in Massachusetts. She's also attending UMass for her master's work. So Monica is not focusing on this topic for her master's. She's actually a bat researcher and really a lover of all animals, okay? One day she heard a bird strike presentation like this from our regional MIG Birds director, Pam Toshik. This was a few years ago, and that is what inspired Monica to take action on that. She got together with some professors and other peers on the campus, began monitoring bird strikes at the different buildings, collected data on which ones were the most risky to birds, and then approached the university with kind of a plan. And one thing she did also was host a community-wide art contest. So members of the college community were able to submit designs which would be put on a facade of the Studio Arts building. And they held the contest, which engaged people, from the college that probably aren't directly involved in bird conservation, but had the opportunity to participate in this. And here you can see the final product there. A lot of people helped out with installing it, but just beautiful facade there. Great design by the winning artist there. And again, this is gonna last for years to come. So not only is it really nice and aesthetically pleasing to look at, it's protecting lots of birds, and all the passersby that are going through here are gonna see that and learn what they can do on their own and hopefully get inspired as well. Fish and Wildlife Service has a really nice article on the rest of that story if you'd like to check it out. So I went over my background on how I got into this and then also that of my friends, and I think it's pretty clear. Everyone has a unique pathway on how they got into this, right? So for me, it was the pigeon, but for others, it's any number of other stories. So I encourage you all to think of what is your first memory with the bird strike issue. You probably have something, right? Like maybe it hit your home, maybe you saw a display somewhere, but you didn't know much about it, but there's probably something that sticks out in your mind. And then I encourage you to think of what you can do at the next level, right? So maybe you'll go home and treat your windows, but how can you take that a step further? Maybe you'll talk to your neighbor about it, talk to your borough council, local libraries, schools like that, and I really encourage you to do something like that. It did not take a lot of effort for me to get started with State College, but that blossomed into something really nice. I'd also like to point out, and it has been really valuable for me as an early career biologist to learn the value of partnerships. So really none of these things would have happened alone. And the more people we can bring together, I think the better product we get. So this was the multi-sector summit on reducing bird strikes with windows and addressing light pollution. That was held here at NCTC last winter. So I had the opportunity to present that, or attend that conference last year, and really it's one of the best conferences I've ever been to. But it brought together people from the lighting industry, from the glass industry, psychologists, dark sky experts, state agencies, academics, really everybody. And this group is still active within the Fish and Wildlife Service and externally, but they're putting their heads together and coming up with some really creative solutions. So this is just one example, but also through my borough partnership and the partnerships I've made with others in my community, learning how important this is to partner together has been super valuable to me. So some things I'd like you to take away is hopefully I've demonstrated to you that the things you can do to address this issue are pretty simple to do, right? Just a few materials, they're low cost, doesn't take long to install them, but by doing so, you're having a really big impact on bird conservation, and we want to help those birds along their already challenging global migration journeys. So it's one thing to do it at home, but I really stress the value of conducting outreach in your community, engaging with groups, and really trying to reach as many people as we can. They don't have to be conservation related, right? Like the general public also loves birds, and I think there's plenty of appeal to be made there as well. So I invite you to have your own impact on global bird conservation, and I look forward to seeing what people come up with. One more slide here. So thank you again for the invitation to speak tonight, and thanks for NCTC for hosting me. I just want to say I'm super grateful for my job. Like I get exposed to a lot of great wildlife resources. It's a really engaging and rewarding job. Thanks to the Migratory Bird Program for making this priority initiative. They're having a really good impact. My colleagues at the Pennsylvania Field Office, shout out to them. I've been with the service for about 6 years, but most of my time I was a student intern. But they've been very supportive of me throughout my whole process. And also all my other friends and colleagues that have helped me out on the way. And really there's more than I can mention here. Again, I'm going to put up the links to the resources here. If you'd like any of the QR codes or resources that I mentioned, you can contact me at my email there. And if you have any questions about turtles, I will also take those too. So thank you, everybody.
Imagine this, you've just filled your bird feeders and your yard is alive with the flutter of wings and the chorus of bird song. Native plants might be filling your landscape, offering natural food, shelter, and nesting spots. Your home isn't just a place of comfort for you, it's a haven for birds and wildlife that share your space. But maybe you want to take it a step further. So we've got a call to action for you. Help us in preventing bird collisions and telling others about it. Each year, over 1 billion birds die from something that's entirely preventable, window collisions. Birds can't see glass the way we do. Reflections of the sky and trees can trick them into thinking it's safe to fly through. The good news, simple changes can make your home or building part of the solution. I'm your host, Catherine Blaylock, and this is the Future of Conservation podcast, where we speak to pioneers in conservation who are making a difference in the natural world for future generations. Today, we're talking about how we can make our buildings safer for birds. Richard Novak from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service joins us to explore the issue of bird window collisions and how small changes in our homes and communities can save bird lives. We'll learn about how he got involved in this work and the practical steps you can take starting right at home. So, Richard, welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, can you start by telling us about your role in Fish and Wildlife Service and more about what you do?
Sure. So I work in the Endangered Species Program, and my title is Fish and Wildlife Biologist. So primarily I work on Endangered Species Act consultations. So if a development project or really any type of project is happening in Pennsylvania, we review that with regards to impacts to federally listed species, and we work with the developers to give them avoidance measures and avoid impacts to those animals. So in addition to that, I'm also involved in some species status assessments, which then inform whether a species goes on the endangered species list. And then a lot of partnership with our state agencies and NGOs for all of our listed species in PA. I work specifically with freshwater turtles.
Cool.
That's what my background is in. And actually my undergrad is in fisheries science, so I'm more of an aquatics person. But through this position, I've been exposed to a lot of really cool wildlife resources, and it's been great.
Nice. So
Yeah.
how did you get into the birds? Was there like a memory that sparked your passion for birds?
Yeah, there was. I've always been a bird appreciator, right? Like growing up, I would bird watch in my backyard and keep little notes on them. When I was a kid at the zoo, I wasn't watching the pigeons, but I was looking in the Komodo dragon exhibit, and a pigeon collided with the glass and was instantly killed, right?
Wow.
So that was my first memory with it.
And how old are you?
Single digit age,
Okay,
8
yeah.
or 9
So
years
young,
old. Yeah, I was
childhood
very
years.
young. But that, stuck with me for my life, and I had a few other instances of it. But growing up, I was just broadly interested in all wildlife. And through this position, like I said, I work primarily with Endangered Species Act consultations. I heard about an opportunity to get involved with bird strikes, and I recalled that image of the pigeon, that memory. And I don't know that I would have volunteered to do it otherwise, right? So it was that memory. I wanted to kind of honor the pigeon and keep it going, and I was in a position to do something. So that's kind of how I got started, and it really snowballed from there.
Nice. And that's fun that the opportunity presented itself within your work.
Through work, yeah, I've been
Yeah.
very grateful. Lots of opportunities and experiences.
That's neat. So window collisions are a really big issue, and they essentially are affecting all birds. All birds are at risk. In recent studies, it was documented in one of the articles that you shared that 28% of species occurring in the continental U.S. and Canada are known to have window casualties. And some of the more vulnerable species included like golden-winged warbler, painted bunting, and the Canada warbler, among others. So I kind of alluded to it in my opening, but can you explain why the window collisions are occurring?
Yeah, so I'll touch on the golden-winged warbler. So that's
Okay.
a species that's already of conservation concern, especially in the eastern part of the U.S. They've really suffered some steep declines. There are papers out there, I'm not too familiar with them, but they seem particularly prone to window collisions. All species of birds don't know what glass is, right? They don't perceive it as a solid barrier. It's not something they evolved with, right? So to them, it's a foreign object. It's totally clear, so they think they can just fly right through. They see habitat on the other side or more open space, and they think it's passable. In many cases, windows have a mirror effect or reflection, so that can reflect habitat back on the opposite side of the window, and it looks like more trees or more open space for them to fly into.
Right.
And they can't perceive that either, which leads into the collisions.
So as you've been kind of implementing these bird-friendly displays and putting up the films and doing some outreach, I'm curious, where have you focused your efforts, and what are some of the key messages you try to share with people?
Sure. So I've always been in kind of a limited funding position on this. Like I said, my main job is endangered species work. So to me, this is something I do when I have free time at work. And I focus my efforts more so on areas where it's going to get a lot of public visibility, because to me that achieves a lot for conservation, like letting people know about this issue. Yeah, so my strategy has been focusing on high traffic community areas. And I might not treat that much glass surface, right? Like it's probably only small square footage at a time, but I try to put it in places where it's seeing thousands of people a year. So libraries, I live in State College where Penn State is. There's botanical gardens up there, the Penn State Arboretum.
Oh, cool.
We did a demonstration there, and it gets tens of thousands of visitors a year.
Nice.
So that message is getting out about the different methods they can do. I'm sorry, what was the second part of the?
The second part is, what are your key messages when you're interacting with the public and kind of applying those films when people ask you questions?
What I always like to share is that these things are very cheap and easy to do. They range from pennies a square foot to just a few dollars. There are some more expensive options, but those are more commercial level. But for the DIY at-home person, it's very cheap. They're easy to do. They only take an hour or two to install, and they last for a number of years. So it's a cheap investment and also a long-term investment. And I also try to phrase it as a global issue, right? So we have birds that are migrating through State College, for example. I see warblers in the spring and fall, but they go down to Central and South America in the winter. So it's important, to protect them while they're here and reduce their collision risk with glass. Mm-hmm. And by doing it, you're having a direct impact on global bird conservation. So I try to frame it that way.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And simple.
Simple and easy to do.
Cost effective.
Yep. I should also mention, it's important to put all the treatments on the outside surface of the glass.
Right.
We may talk about that later, but that breaks up the
So
reflection.
that kind of leads into my next
Perfect.
question.
Yeah.
So let's just speak really practically here. So how do we put on the bird safe films? How do we protect our glass so it's bird safe?
Sure.
What do we do?
Yeah, so first thing you're going to want to do is select an option. We've got a number of them here. Some of them are stickers and decals. Some are as simple as paracord hanging.
Okay.
You can also use paint,
Nice.
tempera paint on window surfaces.
And you mentioned exterior. So the Zen
Yep.
curtain here, that's on the outside. The stickers also go on the outside of the windows.
Everything should be applied on the outside for the highest effectiveness. And that's because windows are typically double pane, right? And in trying to break up a reflective surface, if we're putting it on the inside, the outside surface is still reflective. So it's not that effective for
Right. Birds.
bird detection, correct. Mm-hmm. So we always want to do it on the outside. For some of these decal products, you should do it above around 50 degrees air temperature, Fahrenheit. I have tried colder than that, and the stickers did not stick. So definitely stick to whatever product you use, their manufacturer
So this time of
specifications.
year is a good time to be
Summertime's
applying
good.
it.
I'm hearing that you probably shouldn't do it in direct sunlight. It can get a
Okay.
little too hot. So morning or evening, summertime, spring and fall, also a good time, but around winter, it's probably best wait till next season.
Nice.
And then identify at your home where the highest risk areas are. So if you've got places that birds are regularly colliding, target those first. Maybe you're seeing them actually collide when you're sitting at home, or you're finding bird carcasses at the base of the window. Treat those first. Mm-hmm. And then from there, you can select other windows and maybe do your whole house. And then select the product you'd like. So this, in addition to being cheap, it's also very customizable. The markings for highest effectiveness should be spaced as small as 2-inch by 2-inch spacing for markings. And that deters as small as hummingbirds, right? So
Cool.
you've watched birds fly through tree canopies and shrubs
Right.
and stuff.
Yeah. Swift little things.
Do they ever run into branches?
No, they're so aerodynamic.
Right. So they're making split-second calculations in flight, and they know what they can and can't fit through.
Yeah.
So the purpose of these markings is to simulate, some habitat complexity, and it's opaque, it's not reflective, and they can see it. So we've got a few of the options here. We might talk about them a little bit later in more
Cool.
detail, but whether it's decals, some of the dot grids, paint or tape or whatever you want to do, and then go ahead and do it on your house or business.
Nice.
Yeah.
So for maybe like a front door that's got a little bit of glass, what if a bird hits that? Should you also apply it even if it's a small section of glass?
Yeah.
Or you should target maybe like bigger windows first?
Bigger windows probably have a higher risk. I would say
Okay.
as window size increases, collision risk increases, but that doesn't mean the small ones aren't worth treating.
Right.
At my office, the Fish and Wildlife office, the upstairs is a dentist, okay, and they've got pretty small windows in there. And I was sitting at lunch, sitting outside at lunch, watching, just general bird watching.
Right.
Dove collided right into the window. It's not very big. I'm like, he had all this brick building, and they still go to the
Hit
window.
the glass.
But it's probably because it was reflecting trees, and they thought it was more open space.
How misleading. Gosh. That's crazy.
Yeah. So every square foot matters, right, when it comes to
Right.
retrofitting.
So I'm super fond of feeding birds,
Mhm.
and probably a lot of listeners are as well.
Me too.
I definitely have probably 10 or so bird feeders in my yard. And having bird feeders, you like to have them right outside your kitchen window. So you're likely increasing the proximity or the likelihood that a bird will hit your window. So do you have any tips or guidance on where to place bird feeders?
Sure. I would recommend placing it within 3 feet of
Okay.
the window. And the reason for that is when birds are coming in to land, they're already slowing down. They're putting the brakes on to get to the feeder.
Okay.
And then when they exit, if they do collide, they haven't built up enough speed for lethal or
That makes
injury
sense.
collision.
Nice.
I think the suction cup ones on the glass are okay. But, that's something to consider. If you like to feed the birds and you want to put some feeders out, that's probably a good place to put some treatment up on your windows.
Yeah. So if someone was interested in, putting these up on their windows, are there specific designs that are perfect for birds and bird safe, like approved versus kind of ad hoc, someone's DIYing?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, there's a degree of customizability. Many products have already been, tested. I'm not sure there's approval or certification of any
Okay.
products. But just stick with the general guidelines, the 2x2 spacing. And then from there, you could do art, you could do paint on windows, or some of these kind of pre-manufactured products.
Nice. So beyond our individual homes, how can we bring this awareness into our communities or share this with our families? What have you seen that it takes to engage with your neighbors in schools and things like that?
For me, I mentioned earlier the pigeon story, right? So I
Right.
had that kind of origin story, I guess, for my involvement in it. But when I talk to people, almost everybody has had this happen or have a story of their own, right? Like they might be sitting at home and they hear a thump on the window and a bird died. So for me, that kind of gives me an in when I'm connecting with someone. Like, hey, you've had this happen, and then I let them know that they can do something about it. So kind of engaging with that little bit of familiarity.
Shared connection.
Yeah, it's
nice.
effective. And again, I try to reach as many people as I can because
And
it's
birds are universal too, so it's
They
like
are.
probably everyone has
And
an
they're
experience with birds.
yep, and they're universally loved too.
Yes.
Like who doesn't like birds?
Ding
right?
ding.
So it has broad appeal. You don't have to be in bird conservation to participate in it. It's really open to everyone.
Yeah, nice. That's encouraging. So window treatments and deterrents, they don't have to be boring.
Yeah.
It's really exciting to see some of the bird design that has been coming out. Do you want to talk about one of the projects?
Yeah, sure. So my colleague Monica, she's been conducting some great work at UMass. Again, that's also not her focal area either. She's a bat
Okay.
researcher, but she has
Wow.
this side project with bird collisions on the campus. She spent with her partners a number of years collecting data to identify the highest risk ones and was able to effectively engage with the university administrators. And then she had the idea for a campus-wide art contest to then...
And this is at University of Massachusetts?
Yep, in Amherst, Massachusetts. So people from the campus community could submit their designs, and the selected winner would be put up on the Studio Arts building. So they went ahead with that. They selected the winner, and that product, it was not a dot or anything. It's the actual art image that was
Like the
chosen.
contour of birds and things?
Yeah, it's very beautiful design, features a lot
Right.
of birds, really nice, but it is like a solid film. So I haven't been up there to see it yet. I think of it in those kind of film products as, you ever see like a bus wrap? Like a bus is wrapped in some
So you
kind of
can see
advertisement.
outside.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know what it looks like up there, but it's that kind of image on a film that goes on the window. But they covered the whole facade up there, and it's really beautiful. But, with that art contest, she engaged a whole campus community and people that probably wouldn't have heard about that message before. engaged them in, bird conservation. And now think about how many, thousands of students are going to pass through that building over the years and
Right.
go, oh, what's that all about? And then they learn about it and go
How
home.
innovative.
Yeah, really creative, really cool.
Yeah.
And I hope to go out and check it out someday. So
That's exciting.
yeah.
So in a nutshell, can you share what this work means to you?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Like I said, my background's in aquatics, right? But I've always loved birds. So this has given me a real opportunity to learn a lot more about them and also, have a direct impact. This stuff, when I'm out there talking to people, I feel like I'm having an impact on them. And then I know they're going to go off on their own and do their own things and make their own story. So for me, that's really, personally satisfying. And of course, having the impact on bird conservation directly. Because like I said, every square foot matters. And if I'm able to treat a window and a bird can continue on its migration journey, I may not know that happened, directly, but that's really rewarding. It's been an honor to be part of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I think of it. Like I like to plant seeds in people's minds of things they can do. I'll talk about this at the talk later, but some people have come up with some really creative solutions, the art contest being one of them. And it's really an honor and a pleasure to be part of this group.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exciting.
Yeah.
Nice.
Very cool.
So your talk is about kind of local change, global impact,
Yeah.
and you were already helping us this afternoon at the National Conservation Training Center, putting up those bird films, really exciting stuff.
Yeah.
So thank you for your help.
Thank you.
So as we zoom out for a moment, what does the future of bird conservation look like to you? And how can local actions like changes to a single home scale up to have a global impact?
Sure. Yeah, so I think of the future of bird conservation as including probably more audiences than historically have been included, right? So my personal strategy is try to appeal to everyone. The more people we can get involved in this effort, the more impact we're going to have. And in that same way, the more people we can get to treat glass, the more birds we're going to protect on their migration routes. What was the second part of that?
Like local change, global impact.
Global impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, so locally, right, you might not be protecting tens of millions of birds. You might be protecting a few hundred a year. But if many towns and cities across the US and across the world do this, you add that up and we're talking billions of birds annually are protected.
Yeah.
And when birds are facing many other threats, habitat loss, deforestation, disease, and many other things, this is a totally preventable issue. And it's going to take time. And I'm seeing a lot of momentum, with this movement. I've been involved for about 4 years, and I see it becoming, more mainstream, more partners getting involved, and it's really exciting. So I'm optimistic.
Yeah, you're giving me chills.
Yeah, really?
It's really
Cool.
exciting.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, birds play a vital role in our ecosystems and in our daily lives, and I encourage you all to put up window decals, maybe reconsidering the placement of your bird feeders, and get your community and family involved and help us spread the word. And like Richard said, every action we take makes a difference for protecting them. So thank you so much for joining us
Thank you.
today.
That was an honor.
For all the work you're doing to protect birds. And for our listeners, we'll include the links in the show notes below so you can learn more about bird-friendly practices and including tips for your home and local resources. So to explore further, be sure to visit the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service YouTube channel to watch Richard's full talk, which we'll give later tonight. So thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.